Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Wrap. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, today joined by Marius Roodt. Let's get into the first news story of today, and this is some comments made by President Ramaphosa to business people in light of the upcoming election. We know elections are full on in campaign mode at the moment, and the ANC is also, you can see very clearly, a little bit worried about losing their parliamentary majority. To that effect, and as we will be discussing in other episodes this week and have already discussed, there's been a whole bunch of legislation that is being rammed through quickly before the parliament's term ends, and the ANC perhaps ends up with less than stellar parliamentary numbers. But as part of efforts to avoid this problem, Ramaphosa has been speaking to businesses and saying that there's only one way to avoid the chaos of a coalition in the country, and that's to make sure that the ANC retains its parliamentary majority. Speaking at an ANC fundraising event where he was addressing a number of businesses, including the mining company, the Motti Group, various taxi associations, the South African National Taxi Council, SA Bus Rapid Transit Association, and a number of other companies. He said, quote, "We've seen what coalitions can do. Some people speak lovingly about coalitions, and we are not looking forward to the ANC being cut to size and being below 50%. Let me tell you, that will be the danger zone for our country. Our country needs a strong government that will be led by one party. The other parties can participate. However, we need one party." Now, there's a sort of, I think, an unspoken claim going in here, right? Which is that Ramaphosa is almost sort of threatening the business community in a sense that he's saying, if we don't get a majority, then we're going to have to go into government with someone maybe you won't like. And the kind of implication here is maybe MK or the EFF will then maybe form a coalition with the ANC. Now, I don't know if the ANC has actually decided on doing that, but it feels very much like an abusive spouse saying, "Don't make me angry because you would like it. I'll beat you harder if I'm angry." It's very bizarre campaigning because it's sort of almost arguing against itself. It's saying, we've pushed things. We might do a deal with someone who's so toxic that you better make sure that we get a majority so we don't have to make a deal with anyone who's toxic. I don't know, Morris, what is your take on this? Do you agree with what I'm saying?
This kind of campaigning doesn't surprise me though. The ANC has been saying things about coalitions for a while now, especially since 2021, when it lost its majority, or not lost its majority, but it only won a majority in 2 cities across the country and went into opposition in a whole bunch of places, a whole bunch of municipalities in South Africa. So I think it's pretty much the kind of campaigning you can expect. And yeah, I've seen other ANC politicians say the same kind of thing. David Masondo, the Deputy Minister of Finance, said something similar, saying, and this was to, I think, a fairly different group of business leaders. Who was at a Bank of America function, where he said, if you want the kind of reforms that we've seen so far, I mean, to the credit of the Ramaphosa administration, there have been 1 or 2 reforms you can say have been okay, and things are, on some issues, are starting to move. I mean, it's glacial pace. But Masondo said, if you want these things to kind of carry on, I can see you looking at me funny there, Nick. Sort of things on, allowing more private electricity to come into the grid and stuff. Very, very isolated things, but
at the same time, there's also been, shall we say, business not friendly reforms, tighter BE regulations for procurement, the expropriation without compensation, the national health insurance.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like, you won't even get, I'm not really sure what the pitch here is to business. What will be more commie if you don't vote for us?
Well, look, you're allowed to have your solar panels, but you can't have your own medical. You can't have private medical insurance. We can have solar panels at your farm, but we're going to take your farm away anyway. That's pointless doing it. So
when you lease the farm from us, you can have solar panels on it.
Exactly. Just as an aside, I actually saw the head of the Motti Group, Zunaid Motti, on Sunday at a restaurant for Mother's Day, and I've never seen more Louis Vuitton bags per capita in my life. And it was also obviously for a Mother's Day function, and there were 2 cameramen. So make of that what you will, filming people having a Mother's Day lunch. Anyway.
Marius, you're clearly getting a better salary than I am if you can afford to go to the same kind of the Marty group. Yeah, no, this is a sort of bizarre ANC pitch. It's a little bit like what was done in 2019, I think, when there was this kind of idea that you needed to vote for Ramaphosa. This was expressed by many people in the sort of commentary community and business community that you need to vote for Ramaphosa and the ANC to show that you were supporting his reforms, and that way he would be able to change the ANC away from Jacob Zuma's ANC. But all we've seen is a doubling down. So it was an incredible bait and switch. And quite frankly, I hope that the business community takes a little bit more of a critical approach to similar ideas that are being expressed this time.
I think this way the ANC could get a slight boost, because a lot of people who are probably thinking of not voting for the ANC, and they might, think about whatever other party will vote for the ANC now because they're worried about an ANC under 50%.
Yeah. I think that is definitely something that could have an effect on the political system. But I will say that as a sort of general rule, always favoring the status quo is not always best if you want to change. Anyway, let us go on to our next story. Speaking of change, there have been a lot of discussions in the country about how the electoral system is going to look. Now, in a sort of rush just before this election, we had the electoral system changed to allow independent candidates to stand for parliament. However, there has been promised further reform to move South Africa to a slightly more stable system. I think the implication seems to be that the general agreement amongst, from government and also opposition parties and pretty much everyone is that the system we're going to run this election under is not the greatest. It's a little bit messy. And as part of that, Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has submitted names of a panel to Parliament to consider electoral reform. Now, we're not going to go through every individual person on the list. The chairperson is a former PAC MP who then went on to basically become an official all over government, including being appointed by Jacob Zuma as the head of the Public Services Commission in 2015. There's some names who the opposition parties seem to have supported, but the majority seems to be people who kind of came up with the system we're about to run this election under. Marius, what do you make of this?
Yeah, it's, as you said, just picking the people who gave us this really terrible system. And the system that we had before, the pure proportional representation system, while it was pretty good, we still pretty much have it. There's just been some tweaks to allow independents to stand. It was always only supposed to be a kind of interim system for the first election. And the plan had always been to start implementing a new system either in 1999 or 2004. And the government, they commissioned the late Frederick van Zyl Slubber to look into a new electoral system for South Africa, which he did. And it was kind of the mixed system that we have at municipal level, where half your representatives are picked from constituencies, the other half are then from lists to ensure proportionality. There's also in 2017, also Kgalema Motlanthe also led a panel to look at what's happened in South Africa post 1994. Also said we should implement something like that. There was another ministerial commission that was appointed by Motsoaledi to look at electoral reform, and the majority on there also said we need to have a kind of system where there's a half constituency, half proportional representation. But Motsoaledi and the government went for the minority view on that, and now we sit in this current system. But yeah, there's a lot of good names that were submitted were left out. Mark Atkins, who's done some work with the Institute of Race Relations, was there. Somebody who's a member of my extended family through marriage, Ibram Fakir, he was also nominated but didn't get on there. So, and this does seem to be pretty much an ANC list, or people who are linked to the ANC. Not too many independent names on there, or not necessarily independent, but people who aren't necessarily ANC partisans. So I'm not really holding my breath for a better system. Having some kind of mixed system like we have at municipal level ramped up to national level won't be that difficult. It's used in Lesotho, in New Zealand, in Germany, places all around the world. And it's a system, in my opinion, that works pretty well. And it's definitely something we need to look at, I think.
Definitely. Obviously, we don't know yet what this panel is going to produce as recommended reforms, but I really hope that they seriously consider the work that's already been done on this issue, so that we don't have to continue going back to the well. I think
Exactly.
our municipal system already makes a very good blueprint to kind of follow.
There's no need to reinvent the wheel in this bit.
Definitely. All right. for our last item, South Africa's favorite ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, has decided to wade into issues of representativity of racial groups in sport. Once again, he tweeted on X that only one African player selected in the Proteas team for upcoming T20 World Cup 2024 team. Definitely a reserval of that's how he spells it, of the gains of transformation, and doesn't reflect fair representation of all South Africans in the national cricket team. The 15-person squad has only one black player, Kagiso Rabada, and 5 other players who are not white. Marius, after the great success of our merit-based rugby team, you'd think that South Africa's politicians had learned a lesson that playing racial demographic games at the top level of cricket is not really that helpful to anyone. What do you make of this?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think there maybe are valid questions raised. I think there is a problem if in a country where 80% of people are black, you only get one guy's making it to the Proteas. But this is not the fault of the selectors and the Proteas. This is a failure of development, and not necessarily the government's fault. It's also Cricket South Africa's fault. And Rob Walter, who's the coach of the limited overs Proteas, said he is picking a team that can win this World Cup. And this is a good team. I think it's got a very good chance of winning the World Cup. It's not his job to develop players that are coming through. He's got to pick what he can to do a job for South Africa. And this is what he's done. And it's just...
yeah, this is the exact wrong end of the system, right? We should be getting young players in from poor schools, from rural schools, to go into the system, to maybe get scholarships if they have aptitude for the sport, to get the training early. That's doing absolutely nothing but a meaningless gesture if you start changing players at the end there, because you're just going to cause division.
But as we were saying before the show as well, South Africa, cricket by its nature is a bit of an elite sport. In the whole world, in the UK, most people who end up playing for England have gone to fee paying schools. They're not coming from inner city London or inner city Manchester. Australia's the same. New Zealand's the same. I wouldn't be surprised if India's the same, where most guys who are playing are from fairly upper class backgrounds. Someone like Sourav Ganguly, who was captain of India in the 1990s. He's literally royalty, and guys like Sachin Tendulkar and so on come from upper middle class backgrounds. Of course, you get poor guys who come through, Mohammad Siraj, etc. But I wouldn't be surprised if the proportion of middle class players in the Indian team is higher than the proportion in the broader Indian population. So cricket by nature is a bit of an elite sport, and we can everybody who wants to be able to play the game should be able to play it. But we need to realize that the vast majority of people, wherever they're from, aren't going to be playing for the Proteas. The main aim actually of whatever sport should be just letting people play it if they want to play it, because there is playing sport is an end in itself. You don't have to, if you want to go play cricket, if it's fine to just want to play cricket. It doesn't mean that you need to be playing for the Proteas one day. But just also on Mbalula's comments here, there's a saying there's only one African in the team. If we want to say yes, okay, fine. Whites and people of white South Africans and Indian South Africans aren't really African. Fine, we'll go along with that. There's also Otniel Baartman in the team, who is a colored guy from the Karoo, and colored people often have origins from Khoisan people, who are South Africa's first peoples. They're the first people who were ever in South Africa, and to tell someone like that they're not an African is actually, it just shows you the ridiculousness of racial classifications and saying these people are African and those aren't. It's actually, but yeah, it's just Fikile Mbalula making himself look foolish again, and you have to laugh, otherwise you'll cry.
Yeah, exactly. Rugby, I think, has provided a really great blueprint for other South African sports, cricket and soccer, I think in particular, to really embrace, develop players at the lower level, get that new blood into the system, make sure that there's a proper pipeline of new players. And then, the fact that our soccer team performs so badly, considering, kind of our place in the world and how popular soccer is in South Africa, is, I think, a real mark against sport development in this country. And we also should be winning Cricket World Cups. We just can't quite make it. We're in the upper levels of cricket players, but we're just not at the top. And I think there's a lot of work to be done on that from government side. If we're going to have a Ministry of Sport, then we better have some results from that ministry. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. We hope you found the show interesting. That's a wrap. The Daily Friend Show and The Daily Friend are a project of the Institute of Race Relations, the IRR. The IRR is a think tank which was founded in 1929 to study race relations in South Africa and works to change government policy to improve race relations through non-racialism and to ensure the prosperity of all South Africans. If you like our work and would like to support us, please go to irr.org.za and click Support the IRR, or you can go to thedailyfriend.co.za and click the Fund Us button.